Hey guys, this is Neon, and I'm actually re-recording the beginning of this video. Image Comics is going to unionize, right? They just announced it, had some people send us links to this, including Black Sage D, hat tip to him. And I read through it, I'm like, okay, this is okay, whatever. And I got to the very last thing in their list of demands. And I have to lead with this because this is what this is all about. This is exactly like Kickstarter. The main reason they are unionizing is this. They want Image Comics to have a renewed commitment to company values through the addition of a collective voting option to immediately cancel publication of any title whose creators have been found to have engaged in abuse, sexual assault, racism, xenophobia, homophobia, transphobia, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, ableism, etc. That's pretty broad, until such a time as said creators have engaged in meaningful reparations toward the affected persons. Basically, Image Comics staff want the ability to cancel any creator and any book based on what this group feels at any particular point in time. And while I do agree in some cases with unions, in some industries where employees are legitimately overworked and abused, I think the video game industry, definitely, I think that they're abused, they're staffers. This is basically everybody who signed this wants editorial input in all of the Image books, and anybody can be canceled. They want in writing that they can cancel any book, just like Kickstarter. I think it's going to end just like Kickstarter, where they use the pandemic to get rid of a lot of their unionized employees. And all I can say is good luck with that. So on with the video. Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Neon, and Image Comics is forming a comic book union. Yeah, this is going to be really interesting. We've talked about, comic book publishers, creators, kicking around the idea of unions for the last couple of years. And it's weird that they want to unionize when comic book sales are not what they used to be, when the money is not what it used to be. And, the working conditions, I could argue for, comic book creators, not terrible. It's not like you're being asked to go down to a coal mine. We had an interesting conversation with some Twidiots the other day about the working conditions in Western comics versus Japan in manga. And I'm going to reiterate, in Japan, they work very, very long hours. They work very hard. I'm not saying that Western comic book creators don't work hard. I'm just saying that they don't work nearly as many hours on average as their Japanese counterparts. That being said, the comic book industry is made up of mostly freelance workers. You're a contractor, you're like a plumber, you're plumbing somebody else's comic book series or whatever, and jobs come and go. People aren't working at the comic book factory for the most part, unless you're editorial or sales or a handful of people at these companies that actually are salaried full-time employees. So where the crunch happens, usually it falls on the freelancers. So we're going to look at what the Comic Book Workers United has to say. And it's weird that it's Image Comics too, because Image Comics is made up of a bunch of smaller studios. It's not like the Image Comics factory that cranks out all these books. Image is a publisher and a facilitator and a distributor of comics, but it really is a bunch of smaller studios like Todd McFarlane's stuff and all of that. So let's talk about it. Before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. Over 239,000 subs. Thank you so much for the support. We do talk about the comic book industry, talk about the animation industry, talk about comics in general. We've been talking about unions in regard to pop culture news sites and, video game journalists and the gaming industry. And I actually would say, being someone who worked in comics full time for a number of years, as a freelancer, contractor, right? I would actually say that people that work in the video game industry on average have it much, much harder. The crunch time is much more severe. The demands are much more severe. And that being said, a lot of the work that, we enjoy, whether it's video games or animation or comic books, is, created by people that are not paid as well as they probably should be. People who are working ridiculous hours to get stuff out on deadline, but at least with video games and animation, the money is there, the financial incentive is there. That is not the case with the Western comic book industry. The money is kind of drying up, but this probably comes right on the heels of Striketober, where everybody is going on strike. And I want to be clear before I get into this that I am not anti-union. I've never said that I'm anti-union. I have concerns about people forming unions for industries such as comics, or, look at Kickstarter and all that, where you're a white collar office worker, right? Or you're a freelancer, whatever. Now, if you were being sent to work in dangerous conditions down in a coal mine or something, or, you were being completely exploited, I think that you do need to unionize. That's the reason that unions, came into existence. But in the case of Kickstarter, they wanted to be able to dictate the kinds of content that Kickstarter published or helped publish by allowing certain creators on their platform, certain projects on their platform. And that's not really the purpose of a union. If you want to dictate the kinds of content that goes onto a platform, then go start your own company. It's up to the people that own the company, that operate the company, to determine what is and what is not acceptable. And your job as an employee is to basically carry out their marching orders. That's the reality of the situation, right? Now, again, back to this, comic book workers, for the most part, are independent contractors. They're self-employed. They have their own micro companies, I guess. A lot of them pay their own health insurance. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's not exploitive in some ways, but it is what it is, and that's what the economics of the comic book industry can handle. And I think what could potentially happen if more comic book creators unionize is the companies that were on the fence about floppy comics anyway, like Disney, like Warner Brothers, DC, they might just decide this is the tipping point. This is it. Okay, we were already kind of iffy about making comics. Now it's going to cost us a lot more to make comics. So let's just not make as many comics. Let's not make as many. We've got decades of stuff we can just reprint. The new stuff's not selling as well anyway. And if we need new ideas, we'll just hire writers from Hollywood to come up with new ideas, or we'll hire away the people working on, the top shelf writers working at Marvel and DC. Anyway, this is the tweet thread. Have to give a hat tip to Black Sage D, who sent this over to me. I didn't even see this was a thing. Comic Book Workers United. Let's see what this has to say. We, the workers of Image Comics, have formed a union represented by CWA Union for a more just comic book industry for all. So this is the same people that were behind, I want to say, a lot of the gaming unions and the blogger unions, the creative union, if I remember correctly. For years, comics publishing workers have watched our professional efforts support creators and delight readers. True. Sadly, we have also watched the same labor be taken for granted at best and exploited at worst. Keeping our heads above water was the new normal before the pandemic, and since its onset, we've been expected to take on even larger workloads with fewer resources. Our workforce in the comic book and publishing industry as a whole is overtaxed and undervalued. It's also declining. It's losing ground to manga. I'm sorry. This is detrimental not only to the general staff, but to the creators we are paid to serve and the audiences they in turn work to entertain. Our labor is integral to the comic book industry. It requires specialized skills, dedication, and makes quality publishing possible. A lot of likes in real time going up on this because everybody wants to hear that they're irreplaceable. And unfortunately, and this is coming from a creative, this is coming directly from a creative, unfortunately, that is not the case. Anybody can be replaced at any time. It might not be ideal. They might find somebody that's maybe not as good, or maybe their style is very different, or whatever. But creatives aren't as special as we're told when we're in school. And this is a harsh reality. You're gonna find this out, and take it from an old dog here, right? The harsh reality is that you're, in the eyes of your corporate overlords, you are not a special snowflake. I'm not a special snowflake. Anybody can be replaced at any time. You know, it is what it is. It is what it is. That being said, let's go on. Let's go on. Let's continue. We love what we do, but loving what you do doesn't mean you can't or shouldn't ask for improvements to your working conditions. Well, stay off Twitter. You'd probably get more done. It is with this in mind and with great hope for the future of Image Comics and the comic book industry itself that we announce our intent to form a union and request voluntary recognition. This should not be radical or revolutionary and is, in fact, a natural development for a company that started the way Image Comics did, with a bunch of individual creators and their own studios, their own mini companies publishing comics under one umbrella. I don't understand how this is going to work exactly, but okay. In the early stages of organizing, we looked to Image's founders for inspiration. Their dreams of self-determination and a more equitable treatment in the industry they loved and helped make successful are also our dreams. Then create your own book and start your own little publishing outfit under the Image Comics umbrella? I don't know. Don't listen to me, I'm old. We are honored to grow their legacy by taking this step to give all comic book industry professionals, regardless of title, the same rights, guarantees, security, and protections which the founders sought when they broke away from the big two to start their own company. In fact, several months into our organizing efforts, Jim Valentino made a comment on social media celebrating union accomplishments. That was the moment we knew this could work. So he's going to have to pay you more. Anyway, despite years of union busting and anti-organization sentiments in the American workforce, we know that Image has at its heart a desire to be first when it comes to doing the right thing for comic workers. That's why we know we'll win, because our success is the company's success. Our success is the creator's success. Our success is the reader's success. Find out more and show your support. Drawn in solidarity. Okay. I am skeptical. Let me put it to you this way. I am skeptical. I do know that there are long hours in the comic book industry. Again, though, you're a freelancer. A lot of times you're asked to produce the impossible in an impossibly short amount of time. I mean, I've had gigs I've taken where I've had to like sleep in the chair in the living room for like 2 hours to go back to work on something to meet deadlines. That being said, I'm like, how are you gonna get freelancers into a union? And is this going to incentivize companies like, again, Disney and DC to just do an end run around these creators? Oh, all the American creators are unionizing. Their demands are ridiculous. We're just going to step over them and get more people from the Philippines or something. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not dismissing it out of hand, but I just don't see logically how this is going to work. We're talking about an industry that's in decline. Page rates are stagnant. New readers are not being cultivated. Comic shops are closing. The distribution is a nightmare. There's not much more money flowing. For me personally, I would be like, you get yourself an agent, get yourself a good agent, and you renegotiate your deals. If Disney or Warner decide they want to make your stuff into a movie, you make sure your ass is protected, that you get a bigger cut. I mean, I don't agree that Disney should go make $1 billion off of Captain America, and the people that worked on the Winter Soldier book only get like $5,000. As a bonus. Like, hey, thank you. And if you're lucky, you get invited to the premiere and you get a name in the credits or some shit like that. I don't agree with that. I really don't. But I don't think unionizing is necessarily going to stop that. I really don't. I think what it's going to do is actually going to force more small publishers out of business. And then eventually, again, just my theory, eventually Disney and Warner are going to be like, yep, this isn't working for us. I would not be surprised. I mean, I could be wrong, but I wouldn't be surprised if somebody like Todd McFarlane, who's one of the biggest publishers or micro companies under that Image umbrella right now, is like, yep, maybe it's time to just take McFarlane Productions and move it into its own thing and not publish through Image anymore, if everybody's union and it's going to cost me 3 times as much. I don't know. I'm just saying it never goes the way you think it's going to go. It sounds good on paper. Look at Kickstarter. They unionize, and what they do, they use the pandemic as an excuse to get rid of a bunch of unionized employees. It never goes the way you think it's going to. Coming from Bleeding Cool, trusted journalist, Rich Johnston over at Bleeding Cool. Image Comic staffers form a union, Comic Book Workers United. Today, Comic Book Workers United announced themselves as a union made up of staffers working at Image Comics. Okay, so we're talking like what? Editors, marketing people, etc. They voted by a supermajority to declare the formation of a union. In a statement they declared, and we read all that. So if they're staffers, not freelancers, the staffers aren't the ones actually making the content. Really, they're kind of shepherding the content, but they're not actually making it. That would be the freelancers, the writers and the artists. A statement was signed by Ryan Brewer, Leanna Conter, Marla Isaac, Drew Fitzgerald, Melissa Gifford, Chloe Ramos, Trisha Ramos, John Schlafman, and Erica Schnatz. They have also issued the following goals and are asking people to sign a statement of support. Here are their goals. To foster a more competitive industry as a whole. Well, you have no problem there. Through salary and workload transparency for all existing and proposed job titles, employees industry-wide should know what they and their peers are working for and what they can expect from future employment. Improve staff morale through annual staff and management reviews to assess performance, workload, and whether there is a clear need to expand a department, craft a new role, or increase compensation for employees who've taken on a larger quantity or more complex suite of tasks. Again, this seems like it only affects editorial. And I'm not saying maybe salaried editors aren't overworked. I know at Marvel, they've been spreading people pretty thin, as I understand it, trying to save money. I don't think this is going to help their case. And really, the brunt of the work, most of the work, is freelancers, contractors. And this doesn't seem like this is going to help them at all, does it? It seems like this is the editorial, management level people, but it's not going to help the grunts that are pulling the all-nighters, the people who are getting subpar page rates, et cetera, et cetera. It's still going to be business as usual for them, as far as I can tell. 2, the creation of a more transparent company culture through monthly all-hands meetings so all staff can better understand both the current and future priorities, responsibilities, and workloads of other departments. Increase knowledge retention through the implementation of detailed record-keeping and procedure This sounds like 101 for any company. I mean, hey, if you ever needed proof that the comic book industry didn't work like a regular company, this is it right here. Because if you worked for a regular company with a bunch of employees, they usually do monthly or weekly meetings. They usually tell everybody what's going on. Most jobs I've worked at, white collar jobs I've worked at, Monday mornings, we would have an all hands meeting and everybody would sit down and we'd go department by department, and everybody would kind of go around the table and say where we're at with whatever projects we were working on. That's actually pretty normal. Increase knowledge retention. Okay. Improve career mobility for staff through stricter adherence to the company's stated intent to offer open positions up to qualified existing employees prior to opening them up to the public. This is interesting. So you can't have some big name creative come over here and become the head of the company, with proven sales records until you offer it to somebody who got a gig working at Image right out of college. I don't know. The continuation of remote work for any employee who requests it, and the creation of a detailed policy outlining how the company provides reasonable accommodations. So we all want to work remotely. Freelancers already do. Be a freelancer. Oh my God, that's what they'll do. They'll just be like, yep, everybody's a freelance editor now. Nobody's salaried. You're all freelance. You can work at home if you want to. That's it. Better overall product through the immediate addition of staff, particularly in production and marketing departments. Our creators, retailers, and readers can expect white glove attention for all the books we publish. Books which will go to press with fewer errors, fewer delays, and a more robust marketing presence. If they're paying you more, then they're not going to be paying the marketing more. Market them to who? There are fewer comic shops. I mean, I'm not saying these aren't problems. I'm just like, I don't know if this has been thought through as well. They just want to unionize for reasons because we want to have more. We want to know what's going on. We want to have more say in things, and we want to work at home. A long-term actionable plan to address the overall lack of diversity in both general staff and management. There we go. and the stories we publish can only be improved by staffing our organization in a way that more accurately reflects the demographics of our creators, our readership, and the nation as a whole. Renewed commitment to company values through the addition of a collective voting option. Oh, for fuck's sake. Here it is, guys. Here it is. Here it is. The very last thing. They want to go all Kickstarter. Renewed commitment to company values through the addition of a collective voting option to immediately cancel publication of any title whose creators have been found to have engaged in abuse, sexual assault, racism, and xenophobia, homophobia, transphobia, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, ableism, until such a time as said creators have engaged in meaningful reparations toward affected people. It is exactly like Kickstarter. Good fucking luck with this. It's not going to fly. Well, if it does, Image, you're done. You're done. Because they want the ability to veto projects. They want the ability, they want in writing that they can cancel people. In writing. You know, and Image is not a comic book factory. It's a bunch of independent creators and independent studios publishing under one umbrella. If I were an Image creator at this point, just even though I don't think I have any problem with anybody I've worked with in this regard, I would pull out because I'm like, I am not going to let a bunch of people, freaking peanut gallery, decide what we can and can't publish. I think this is not going to go well. This is not going to go the well they think. Yeah, here, I see very little about actual working conditions and a lot that sounds like they just want to do management's job. Good luck with that. Good luck with that. I actually, because of that last clause there, I think you're going to see a lot of people leave Image. Yeah, I wouldn't agree with that. I'd be like, no, because you guys, you know, what actually do you consider racist, homophobic, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? You know, exactly like Kickstarter. And it's going to end exactly like Kickstarter, where they're going to find a reason to get rid of these people. You watch. You watch. I'm going to wrap it up. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. We'll talk later.